So let us start. First, we will talk a little bit about linked lists, given that you have already completed linked list or would be in middle of linked list. And then we will talk a little bit about binary trace. Okay. So now you have finished linked lists, right? And you have solved a lot of questions based on that, right? So the reason linked list data structure would be existing is because it solves some question that might not be solved using some other data structure, right? Otherwise, what is the purpose of linked list? I can solve every question using array vector or stacks queues, right? So just put your heads at work for a few moments and tell me, have you seen any real life application which would definitely need linked list to be implemented? I mean, I can't do that thing without linked list. An example you can give, like if you use something like doubly linked list, it can be a little more efficient as compared to other data structures, but using other data structures also you can get the things done for you. Something which is can you think of something which is very basic that you encounter on day-to-day life, you do every day on your computer, and if linked list were not there, your computer could just not do that? Let me give you one very simple example, and I can bet that you use it almost daily. In fact, some of you would be using it on hourly basis. Tell me one thing. All of you save files on your computer, right? That file could be anything. That file could be a text file or a .cpp file or a .mp4 file, anything. When you save it, where does it get saved? I mean, there are multiple devices on your computer, motherboard and this and that, GPU. On which device does it get saved when you save a file? Yeah, hard disk. Very simple answer. So hard disk or solid state drive SSDs, if your computer is enabled with SSD, does it get saved on RAM? Does that happen? No. Why no? The reason is because RAM does not store data forever. When I say forever, if the program that is using an array or a program that is using a vector that dies, then every data dies. Or let's say the power goes off. When the power goes off, your computer shuts down because of some reason. And then when it restarts, then the RAM also kind of restarts. So everything that was there before is kind of gone. So when you save something that you want to be stored forever, it gets stored on hard disk. Okay. Now, how does hard disk actually store data inside it? So let us take an example. I think all of you know the shape and structure and everything of hard disk. I mean, it contains of disk kind of things, and then there is spindle like that. Then there are different sectors and all. So I'll not be going into those details, but let us talk about some important things. So let's say it contains various memory blocks. Okay, so let me just give a diagrammatic representation of memory blocks. So let's say this is your memory block 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, let's say this, and this block are already full. This and this are also already full. Okay. Now you are trying to save a file, which is your maybe resume. You are trying to save your resume.pdf on your hard disk. And to save this, you need 3 memory blocks. You need 3 memory blocks. My question to you is, will you be able to save? Okay, so look at here. Do I have 3 memory blocks? The answer is yes, I have. But what is the problem? The problem is that these 3 memory blocks, are they contiguous? They are not contiguous, right? Now, because they are not contiguous, even if you save it, even if let's say you take out this much part and save it here, take out this much part and save it here, and take out this much part and save it here. Let's say you are able to do that. Now, next time when you are trying to read your resume, then what will happen? Your operating system will read the data from somewhere. So let's say it knows that, hey, here something is present. It will read, and then it will slip into this zone where some other data is present. So what to do? Can I somehow link this thing to that, saying that, hey, once you are done with this node, jump onto this node? And then when you are done with this node, jump onto this node. If we do something like this, our life will get sorted. And the only way to get it done is via having pointers, that there are different memory blocks which are pointing to other memory blocks. Do you understand this example? Just type in yes or no. Right? Now, if we did not have a linked list kind of implementation or linked list kind of fundamental concept, then this problem was unsolvable. And by the way, who solves this problem for you? Do you write a program that decides that if you are trying to save a file, then how is that supposed to be saved? No, you don't do that. Who does that for you? Your operating system does that for you. Operating system is the program that takes care of dealing with your hardware. All these low level stuffs, that if you are saving something, at what exact location it should go, how it should go, how is it to be read, and everything, right? So your operating system kind of relies a lot on linked list based implementations when it comes to saving things on a disk. Okay, cool. So just an example, there are many interview questions also which are asked in the same pattern. In fact, they might sometimes ask you to write a simple piece of program that reads some data from a file, and after reading them, kind of stores them at different disk contiguous locations, and then write another program which can read it. So you can write a reader which knows what is the head pointer and reads everything from here, and then once it gets over, moves on to the next, and then moves on to the next. Some design based questions. Okay, cool. So that was just for an example's sake. Anyone who has any question or anything to ask in this, you can ask that. Okay, so what is a tree? What is a binary tree? How is it different from linked list? Anyone who can talk about it? Can I say that tree is nothing but a special kind of linked list? Would you agree to that? Yeah, absolutely. I can say that, hey, when you implement a tree, what do? You have a node, and now this node can point to a node in one direction and can point to some other node in another direction also. So it's just a hierarchical kind of linked list, right? Where there will be no loops. Of course, there will be no loops. So let's say if this points to this, and this can never point to this. So this is the only thing which has to be ensured, that there will be no loops. But what can happen is that there exists a node and it can have a lot of pointers emanating from it, pointing to different other nodes. So the only difference that exists between a binary tree and a linked list is that here also you will have data in its structure or value, whatever you call that. And this time you'll be having two pointers if it is a binary tree. So first pointer will be for left, pointing to left node, and second pointer will be for pointing to the right node. As simple as that. Cool. So now what we'll do is we'll quickly jump onto a question and see if we are able to solve it or not. So let's say we have been given a binary tree. Okay. So let me just create a structure of it. I'll not be putting values. I'll be putting them later because those are not important for now. So let's say this is the kind of binary tree that we have. Yeah, it has certain nodes. What we have to do is we have to traverse this binary tree diagonally. Do you understand what I mean when I say diagonally? There are several diagonals that I can see over here. First diagonal line is this. Second diagonal line is this. And third diagonal line is this. Along this diagonal line, these are the three nodes that are there. Along this diagonal line, these three nodes. Along this diagonal, this node. So let's say the value present in this was A, then B, then C, D, E, F, and G. I have to first print the topmost diagonal, okay? And then the one that comes below, and then the one that comes below, and then the one that comes below. But whenever we are printing a diagonal, the nodes are to be printed from top to down. So I'll first be printing A, B, C as they belong to the first diagonal, and they are being printed from top to down. Then I'll come down and print D, E, F, and then I'll print G. This is what I'm required to print. Does that make sense? Just type in yes or no. Okay. No need to jump onto the solution straight away. Let us understand the question a bit more, then I'll give you ample of time to think of various solutions and maybe implement them on your own. So let's take an example. Let's say you have a node having value 1, and then you have a 2, and then maybe you have a 3, then you have a 4, yeah, and then you have a 5, and then you have a 6, 7, 8, and let's say you have a 9. Can you tell me what will be the output? If I perform a diagonal traversal over here, what is it that I'm going to get? Yeah, let's just take a look. Do you all realize why I have drawn this 5 pretty much close to this 3? Because if we use our senses, we can realize that, hey, the right child of this 4 will come in the same vertical line, and the left child of this 2 will also come in the same vertical line. So if you're talking about the diagonal that passes through this, it will be touching 4 along with 5 and 3 and then 9. So in this case, you might be a bit confused and you might ask me that, hey, in what order should I print? So I would say that, hey, if you want, you can print 4, 5, 3, 9. If you want, you can print 4, 3, 5, 9, 5, 9. I don't have any issues with that. And then this is your lowermost diagonal and this is your uppermost diagonal. So of course, you should be printing 1, 2, 7, 8, followed by 4, 5, 3, 9, followed by 6. Is everyone clear? Anyone who has any sort of confusion or anything that you want to ask? Anyone who is unable to visualize the diagonals or anything of that sort? So let's think, how do I solve it? What is not clear? 4, 5, 3 is not clear. Why is it not clear? I think now it will be clear. So do you see that? Do you see that clearly? 4 has a right child. 2 has a left child. Both of them are intertwined. So if I draw a diagonal line, it will definitely be passing through 4 as well as 5 as well as 3. Does that make sense? Yes or no? No. Okay. What do you think? What do you think? On which diagonal do you think should 3 lie then? Look at this. This is your first diagonal. This is your second diagonal. Do you agree that 4 and 5 lie on the same diagonal? Yes or no? Okay, cool. Do you agree that the left child of 2 will coincide with this 5? Yes or no? Then what is the problem? What does that mean? That 4, 5, and 3 will lie along the same diagonal. If a line passes through a point, if you draw another point on top of that, it will continue to pass through that, isn't it? Does that make sense? Yes or no? Yes, overlapping. So what's the issue? They're just overlapping, but I don't mind that. That's what I said. Even if they are overlapping, you can print both of them. You should print both of them, right? 4. That's why I told you, right? You can print 4, 5, 3, 9, and if you want, you can print 4, 3, 5, 9. This ordering does not matter to me because both of them are overlapped. You can't say that which one comes above and which one comes below. I hope that should be helpful. Are others clear with this thing? Yes or no? Some of you suggested some approaches before, like level order traversal and everything. I would like to hear others' opinion as well. Is level order traversal going to make sense here? Not exactly. That definitely is not going to make exact sense, but maybe think something else. One of you is saying idea is to take the same reference value in left and right should increase by 1. Same reference. Okay, what do you mean by reference? Can you define that for all of us? 0. Okay. And what does that 0 mean? You'll call that diagonal as diagonal 0, and the diagonal that comes below as diagonal 1, and the diagonal that comes below as diagonal 2. Is that what you're trying to say? Yeah, that is a good thought. For others, I would give a very simple hint. How many of you have read hashing properly on a dashboard? Yeah, Vivek is talking about using a map of integer and vector of integer and then perform pre-order traversal. And good, yeah, that is the way out over here. So those of you who would have learned hashing, you would immediately react to what I would say. So did you encounter a question in hashing where there was a matrix and I gave you a question saying that if a cell contains 1, convert all the cells along the diagonal to 1, 1, 1. How many of you remember this question in hashing? It was there, right? It was there. It was just a follow-up of a question which asked you that if a cell contains 1, make entire row and column as 1. As a follow-up, I had given you, if the cell contains 1, make the entire diagonal also that passes through that cell as 1. As simple as that. Now, what was the idea that we used over there? Does anyone remember that? So if you take a look at any diagonal line, let's say this diagonal line, then the cells are 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. Okay. Now, if you talk about this diagonal line, the cells are 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3. Anything which is common? What is it which is common? If I call the x coordinate as I and y coordinate as j, what is it which is common? Look, x is equals to y only for this diagonal. X is not equals to y for this diagonal. So I'm asking that, how do I find out whether two cells are along the same diagonal or not? How do I find out? What is the property of, all these cells that is making them lie on this line? What is that property? So if you take the difference of I minus j, will it be same? Let us consider this. Along this line, if you take I minus j, you will get 0. Along this line, if you take I minus j, you will get minus 1. 0 minus 1, 1 minus 2. Now, if you consider this, along this line, if you take I minus j, you would happen to get minus 2. You can try that out because this will be 0, 2, and this will be 1, 3. How many of you realize this thing, this typing? Yes or no? Yeah, yes, no, if you get that, anything that you do not understand. And this is not just something that came out of blue. This is very, very consistent with basic mathematics, because I can say that every diagonal, when you look at, is nothing but a straight line. And it is a straight line that has a slope of around -1, that has a slope of -1. All of them have a slope of -1. Okay. So the relationship between x coordinate and y coordinate, if you take their difference, that will continue to be the same thing. So, you can say that, hey, this line is y equals to minus x. This line is y equals to minus x. Okay. And then the next line you can say is equals to y equals to minus x plus some constant c. Okay. And then some other line that comes on top of it is like y equals to minus x plus some other constant c dash. Does that make sense? How many of you are getting this particular point? Right? Now, how is it going to be useful? We will understand that. Can I imagine all of these nodes as if they were, cells in a two-dimensional space, in a two-dimensional XY plane? Can I imagine that? Yes or no? Quickly. Right? I can do so, isn't it? So I can say that, hey, if this is the tree that somebody gives me, okay, now look very carefully. I can say that, hey, this is 0, 0. Now just think from this perspective. If this cell is I comma j, the cell towards its right side is I plus 1 j plus 1, isn't it? Look at this matrix. This is your I comma j. This will be I plus 1 j plus 1, because one row below and one column ahead. And what will this be? Can somebody tell me the numbers for this thing? I'm just trying to model this as the root, this as the left child, and this as the right child. What is it? I minus 1 j minus 1. No, wrong, because clearly that cell is lying below. So the row number should be I plus 1. Column number can be j minus 1. Are others able to figure that out? Yeah, good. So this will be I plus 1, j minus 1. Now the job is very simple, isn't it? So if I call this 0, 0, I can call this 1, 1. And I can call this, yeah, you tell me, what will you call this? It will be I plus 1, j minus 1. So you're going down, so your I is increasing. Your row number is increasing, but your column number is decreasing. Similarly, what will it be here? Can you tell me the coordinates for this? You're going down, so it will be 2, comma, minus 2. And what will this be? You're going down again, so it will be 3, but now you're moving right. So it will also increase by plus 1. So it will be I plus 1, j plus 1. It will be 3, comma, minus 1. Similarly, can you figure out for all the other 3 remaining nodes? Okay. So yeah, This is going to be again I plus 1, j plus 1, 2 comma 0. And this, which is coming as the left child, what will it be? I plus 1, which is 2, j minus 1, 0. Did you see that both the points got mapped to the same thing? And then again, the right child, what will it be? It will be 3 comma 1. Now, when you look at these nodes that are along this particular diagonal, their difference of I minus j is 0. What is the difference of I minus j for these nodes? Subtract and tell me. I believe at least this much you should be able to do, right? So do you realize that all the diagonals, sorry, all the nodes that are along the same diagonal have the same value of I minus j? Does everyone feel convinced about that now? If no, you can let me know that, because our solution is going to be based on entirely that. So these things will have a value of I minus j as 2. These things will have a value of I minus j as 4. Now, why not map these nodes for these values of I minus j? So I can have a map in which the first thing is integer and the second thing is a vector of nodes. Okay. So when I'm talking about integer 0, then I'll be having a vector corresponding to it, which will be containing these two nodes. Let's call them AB. So it will be containing AB. When I'm talking about the value of I minus j as 2, then corresponding to it, there will be a list which will be containing 1, 2, 3, 4. These four nodes, let's call them CD, E, and F. So it will be containing CD, E, and F. And similarly, so on and on and on. So now what you can do is that if you have gathered this map, then you can just iterate on its keys. And for every key, you can read the list and print the data. So first you will read for 0, you will find AB. So you will print AB. Then you will read the list corresponding to 2 and you will print C, D, E, F. And then the next, so on and on and on. Does it make sense to everyone? How many of you believe that this idea can be implemented? So a lot of you who were talking about the approach that you can have, you can have a particular thing saying that whether it is diagonal number 1 or diagonal number 2 or diagonal number 3 is actually based on this thing only. This is the most fundamental thing, which simply says that points along the same diagonal, if that diagonal has a slope of -1, then points along the same diagonal will have a difference of coordinates as a constant value. Okay, cool. So if I can gather this data, put it up in a map, then my job is done, isn't it? So how to do it? How to gather this data? Can I just perform a pre-traversal and then pass my map to it? And then while I am at a node, let us also pass the coordinates of that node. Can I do something like that and get the job done? Yeah. Yeah, so that can definitely be done. So just think of it in this manner. You have a function f where you are passing a node and you are passing the coordinates of that node and you are passing your map. This is an unordered map. It can very well be an unordered map because the key is of a primitive type. Okay, that's your function. Can you tell me what all functions will it be calling? So first you touch a node and then gather it in its appropriate slot. So you find out I minus j and you just put it in that particular vector which is corresponding to I minus j. And then the left call that you will be making will be for node left. Okay. And what will be the value of I and j that you will be passing? So we all know that is going to be I plus 1, j minus 1, and pass that map by reference because this is our answer gatherer. Okay. Similarly, for the right call, you will be passing node right, and the coordinates will be I plus 1, j plus 1 as we already know, and you will pass your gatherer by reference, which is your map. This is your simple recursion. Just have a termination condition that whenever you hit a null node, don't do anything, just exit, as simple as that. Otherwise, whenever you are at a node, find I minus j and put up this thing at that particular slot in the map. This is what you're supposed to do. Okay, while you are implementing it, my question to you is, what will be the value of I minus j for the very first diagonal? No matter how your tree looks like, what is its structure, can you tell me the value of I minus j for the very first diagonal? Will it be 0 for sure? Yes or no? The answer is yes. Common sense again, right? Because our root is always at 0, 0. Because our root is always origin, 0 minus 0 is 0. So everything that comes on it will be like 0 plus 1, 0 plus 1. And then if it had a child, that would be 1 plus 1, 1 plus 1. So the difference will be 0. Now, will you ever have a diagonal where the value of I, where the difference of I and j happens to be 1 or 3 or 5? Just look at it and tell me, will you ever get a diagonal like that? Are you getting a diagonal like that in this particular test case? I got a diagonal where I minus j was 0, and then the diagonal below it has I minus j as 2, and then the diagonal below that has I minus j as 4. Can you make this observation? How many of you can make that? And can you justify why is that happening? Why don't I get the diagonals where I minus j is odd? Why only evens? It's a very simple thing to be thought of. Just put some heads at it and let me know. So it's simply because of the nature in which you are making the changes. So just think of it in this manner. If I comma j is your root, then whatever comes towards right will be along the same diagonal. So no questions asked about that. But when you are creating a left subtree for it, and let's say you're attaching it with the values of I plus 1 j minus 1, I mean its coordinate, then what is the difference that you are getting? If you do a difference of this and this, you will get I plus 1 minus j plus 1, and this thing will be I minus j plus 2. So I can say that, hey, here, if the difference was I minus j, then here the difference will be I minus j plus 2. And then again you go, then you will realize it will be I minus j plus 4. It is simply because of the way we are changing the values, because if you are moving left, we are adding plus 1 to this and we are adding minus 1 to it. So plus 1 minus 1 means 2 units of separation, not 1 unit of separation. Yeah, so that sums it up. Does it make sense? How many of you understand that why it is 0, 2, 4 and not 0, 1, 2, 3, 5, something like that? Okay, now the final thing over here is that once you have gathered this data in a map, if it is an unordered map, will it store the data in some ordered manner? I mean, how do you figure out that which vector corresponds to I minus j0 and which vector corresponds to I minus j2? How will you figure that out? Yeah, so you can use a tree map, but can somebody really tell me why tree map is used? So guys, you should really be able to tell me, given that you are at linked list and trees, you must have done hashing. You should be able to answer these basic questions. We can keep a min max counter. Very good. So that is one way to do it. But answer me, why should we not use tree map or an ordered map? What is probably wrong with using that? Can it increase my time complexity? Yes or no? It will increase my time complexity, because when you do insertion or anything in a tree map, ordered map, then that is of cost order log n, not order 1, which is amortized cost for our unordered maps. So if you want, you can use a tree map, and the tree map or ordered map will keep data sorted based on the key value. So you can first get this particular vector, and then another vector, and then another vector. But what you can do is that while you are performing tree traversal, you can track that what was the maximum value of I minus j. So let's say the maximum value of I minus j was found to be 4. It means I'll be running a loop where my I will go from 0 to 4 in steps of 2. So I'll write it in this manner: I equals to 0, I lesser than equals to 4, I plus equals to 2. And why in steps of 2? I have told you that. Because if this difference is 0, this is 2, this is 4. So I can do something like this, and then I can do a map dot get of I. I'll get the corresponding vector, and I'll print the data. As simple as that. Does that make sense to all? So this will be the simplest way to get it done. Now just answer me one very simple question here. Will it be guaranteed that the nodes that are coming along the same diagonal will be coming like DEF? So let's say for the second diagonal, the values are DEF. Is it guaranteed that you will get DEF and you will not get something like FDE or any other permutation of it? So look at the way we are making function calls. So those of you who would have reached to traversals, you would have realized that, hey, this is a classical pre-order traversal, where you first touch a node And then first you touch left child and then you touch right child. That is the nature of pre-order traversal. Now, because you are doing a pre-order traversal, this thing will be automatically assured for you. But if you do reverse of pre-order traversal or in-order traversal or any other traversal, then this might not be ensured. And let me tell you why. In pre-order traversal, you always first touch the root and then you touch the left child and then you touch the right child. Now, let's say there was a diagonal. Forget about everything. Let's just talk about a diagonal. No tree, nothing. Now, can it happen that you touched this node without touching this node if you are doing a pre-order traversal? Is it possible? The answer is no, never possible, because it is a parent. And in a pre-order traversal, you always first touch parent and then only you move on to children. So it can never ever happen that I get a permutation of it, because when you say permutation of it, you mean to say that, hey, before first element, maybe third element came. How can that come? Before this third element, its parent, and before its parent, its grandparent has to come. So doing it using pre-order is ensuring that the data for every value of I minus j is automatically coming in the desired order, and usage of map is ensuring that the right kind of nodes are chunked together in separate groups. Does that make sense why pre-order is the way to go over here and not maybe level order or something else? Okay, you can think whether traversals like level order or something other would even make sense here or not, and take that as a food for thought. Cool. So now I would want you guys to just go ahead and implement it. So let us take a look at how to write the code over here. So all of you can imagine that there is a traverse function which will do the same thing that pre-order traversal does. The only thing is that it will be taking coordinates of the node and it will be taking a map where it will be gathering the data. Okay, and it will also be taking a variable called as the maximum value of I minus j. So I'll just call that maximum, and whenever I am at a node, I'll check the value of I minus j of that node and I'll update that variable if needed. Okay, so let's see how is that idea to be implemented. Yeah, so the traverse function that I'll be writing needs not return anything. It will be a void function, okay? And it will be taking the node where you are at right now and int ij, which will be denoting its coordinates. And you can pass that unordered map by reference, okay? So I'm just mentioning its type to avoid confusion. It will be map of integer to vector of nodes. We can do that, right? So it will be unordered map for me, and it is passed by reference, mind it. And then I'll also be passing a variable maximum, which is initially 0, and it will be, I mean, over the entire runtime, it will tell me what was the maximum value of I minus j ever encountered for any node. Now, the first piece of code is to handle nulls. So if my node is null, I'll just return. Otherwise, what to do? So otherwise, the first thing that I'll do is, who knows that maybe the node which I am at right now, let's say I came from here to here, maybe the node that I am at is the first node of a particular diagonal. So if it happens to be the first node of a particular diagonal, then the entry for that particular value of I minus j might not be there in the map. So what I'll have to do is I'll have to create a new vector and push that new and empty vector into the map. And then I'll perform push of this particular node. So what I'll do is, if diagonal dot find I minus j is equals to diagonal dot end. If this is the case, that means, hey, this is the new node. This is in fact the first node of a new diagonal, of a brand new diagonal, which is denoted by I minus j. Let's create a vector of node star v for that, and then just do diagonal of I minus j. These are just map specific constructs, okay? So just revise them in case you have forgotten. So you'll do diagonal of I minus j equals to v. And after that, you will perform push of the root node. So you'll say diagonal of I minus j dot pushback of the root node. And then you will also update your maximum, right? So you will write maximum is equals to max of maximum comma the current value of I minus j, and after that you will be making the next two calls, traverse The only important things that will change is root will call root left and will pass I plus 1 j plus 1. Other things are same. And here it will call root right and it will pass I plus 1 j minus 1. Other things are the same. Okay. So that is what you will be doing. Just hold on. This is left call. For left call, it will be I plus 1 j minus 1. And for right call, it will be I plus 1 j plus 1. You realize that because this is the left. So if it was ij, left was I plus 1 j minus 1 and right was I plus 1 j plus 1. Is everyone clear with this particular method? Because this is to be used by our actual main function. Okay. So now all that we can do is we can have a main method. And this main method will take the responsibility of calling this main or driver, whatever you call. It'll say, hey, traverse starting from the root whose I and j are 0, 0, pass the map. So it can declare the map over here and pass that by reference. Already that ampersand sign is there. And maximum variable. As I said, maximum variable can be initialized to 0. Now, once this much of thing is done, then I know that, hey, the first diagonal is for I minus j equals to 0. Then the next diagonal is for I minus j equals to 2. So now the piece of code that is to be written would be for I equals to 0, I smaller than equals to maximum, and I plus equals to 2. What you will do is that now you will consider the vector corresponding to I equals to 0. So now you will want to iterate on that particular vector. Okay. So you would write for j equals to 0, where j is pointer to the elements of this vector, j equals to 0, j smaller than whatsoever this vector is. So this vector will be, m of I dot size. That will be the size of it, right? Because whenever you do m of I, m dot get I, you will get this vector, right? J plus plus. So now in this internal loop, what you are doing is you are iterating over the elements of that particular vector. And now you can just print them here. That's it. You can print them here, or if the question is asking you to collect them in a vector of integers, you can do that also. That's totally up to you. Cool. Finally, anyone who can talk to me about the time and space complexities? Let's say the number of nodes is n. Anyone who is not able to figure out that how to even compute the time and space or anything. So let us understand that it's not a very tough thing. So if you take a look, how many times do you touch a node of a tree, a particular node? Let's say this node. How many times you touch it? You touch it only once. So let's say a call is made over here. What do? Nothing special. You just go here and do something which is order 1 based operation. You create a vector, empty vector, and put it in the map. And we know that as long as my map is unordered, putting something inside is order 1 on amortized basis. And then again, these things are also order 1, and then you make the 2 calls. So whenever I'm at a node, I do this much of work, which is constant amount of work, and then I jump on to the next set of nodes. It's just like you have an array. When you are at the first element, you just look at it, and then you jump to the next element. So the same thing you are doing here. Does this node, move to its children, and then does them, move to their children. So it will be order n based approach. And your space complexity is also going to be order of n. Why is that going to be order of n? Very simple, because you have a map which will be containing a lot of vectors, which can be of different sizes. But when you club those sizes together, it will be order n. Because in that map, all the nodes are being put up, right? So your time and space both is order n over here. Does that make sense to everyone? How we have concluded order n and order n as the time as well as space complexity. So I think you can follow the same pattern of finding time and space complexity that I have told you, specifically the time complexity. Do not get very confused. First step is to figure out, are you touching a node multiple times? If you can hardly say that no, I'm touching it only once, then also the job is not done. Then you have to figure out how much work you are doing whenever you are at a node. So I concluded that amount of work done at every node is order 1. And there are n nodes. So total work will be number of nodes multiplied by work done at every node. This thing is 1, right? So your complexity was order of n. Just follow the same thing and you should be able to figure out complexity, the time complexity of any problem that you are solving on trees. Okay, the same pattern applies there as well. Cool. I had given you a food for thought in between. I had asked you that, hey, here I was performing a pre-order traversal. Now, some of you might be knowing about level order traversal. If you do not know, please don't get intimidated. You will learn it very easy, and it is simplest traversal. I personally consider it very, very simple. So level order traversal, what it does is, if you have read queues properly, queues is a prerequisite for it. In queues, you must have listened to me talk about level order traversal. Using a queue, we can perform level order traversal of a recursion tree or any other thing that we want. So level order traversal means first is these nodes, then these nodes, then these nodes, then this, then this. Let me ask you one very simple question. We will keep our map the same, but instead of pre-order traversal, we will do level order traversal. If we do that, will we get a wrong answer, or will we continue to get the right answer? What do you feel? It's considering left to right, but I think that is not so important here. The thing that is important here is that even in level order, if you stick yourself to a particular diagonal, is it possible that you touched this little thing before touching this little thing? Is that possible? The answer is no, because you're coming from top to down. As you are coming from top to down, it can never ever happen that you touch this thing before touching this thing, or you touch this thing before touching this thing. So I have not yet concluded whether it will work or not. I've just given a proposition. So what do you believe? Based on whatever I have said, do you think that level order traversal will also give a correct answer? Yes or no? Okay, so think of it. Maybe based on whatever you have concluded, you can then finally write a code of level order traversal and see if that works or not. Okay, so these things are important, quite important. You got the code working, that is the first thing. The second thing is, if your interviewer makes these kind of changes, asks you these questions, you should not tell him that, hey, let me write the code and see what happens. No, you should be able to call that out based on some logic. So I've given you a reasoning, and that reasoning kinds of pushes us to say that, hey, for a particular diagonal, I'll still get the items from top to bottom. So maybe this approach will work. Okay, so just think on top of that if it is sufficient or not sufficient, or am I just missing something or not. Yeah, cool guys, so that'll be it for today.